Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Everything is safe and secure. I am here talking with my friend and yours, Matthew Jackson. Thanks for joining the show, kind of very late notice, by the way, during anniversary week. By the way.
Yes, happy anniversary.
Thank you. And I got to tell you, I refreshed myself and I got to tell people about it. The obscuravox.com is the website. And let me click on it here. The recent article Matthew has put out entitled The Expansive Framework of Instrumental Transcommunication, ITC, Unveiling the Foundations of ITC, Understanding the Bones of Communication with the Unknown. If anyone is interested, even like 1% in instrumental transcommunication, or if they even have a passing fancy in consciousness being a connective tissue between realms, dimensions, entities, humans, and absolute knowledge like the Akashic records, etc., you have to read this. How long have we known each other now, Matt?
Let's see. I think we started talking. It was like, I don't know, 2020, 2021, something like that. I know I
So
started
about four
listening
or
to
five
pod
years.
during COVID.
Okay, so
Yeah,
about 5 years.
yeah.
Um, when we first knew each other, I feel like our lives are so much different now than they were then.
Mm.
And I think the journey you've been on, I don't know how to say this without it sounding um, like a backhanded compliment, but it's not a backhanded compliment at all. I want you to first of all understand that this is great. Like, I'm not a fascist, but it's like one of those things.
Yeah.
This isn't a backhanded compliment. I swear to God, it's not. But the way you have leveled up your presentation of very dense, difficult to understand information regarding ITC, the paranormal, and phenomena in general, it's bonkers. Um, I feel like I'm reading a presentation that should be the keynote speech at the Conscious Life Expo when I'm reading this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Meanwhile, there's all kinds of people running around Los Angeles right now getting ready to do the Conscious Life Expo who knows what they're talking about. You know what I mean? But it's a 2-week extravaganza of a bunch of woo-woo wild ones running around. But this presentation it's a must read. People must read this if they have any interest whatsoever. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, and the just the way you wrap it all together, the way you tie in, like basically you're outlining a holistic approach to ITC, right?
Yeah. I've just been obsessed with, I've been obsessed with ITC forever. So I finally came to the conclusion that I'll probably never understand how it works, but I've been obsessed with the question of why it works. And I think that's been something that's really driven me over the past few years because, I've documented enough ITC responses and have done so many sessions and I've networked with so many of the like ghost box builders and then my relationship with Joshua Sean and, just networking in general. I I know that ITC is a real phenomenon, and if anything exists, it has to have some sort of framework or mechanism that kind of that drives it. And so I just started a while ago making notes of just different philosophical concepts, theories, science, theology, anything that I felt like might open a window to this type of communication. And I started making a punch list. And as I went through, I was trying to find like a fun or clever way to see if there's an underlying theme that connects them all, if there's a way that one might lead to another. And just through like my experiences with, the heaven and so forth. There's just so many different ideas, but I think the one underlying aspect of it is without us, it doesn't exist. And so I've not been able to shake the idea that really it's consciousness that is the key to making everything work, and especially ITC. I don't think they're separate. I think they're all together, and I think our consciousness, thoughts are energy. It's able to commingle with other consciousness, and I think that even translate to other entities, other frequencies, and people who are deceased. I think we're all uploaded into like the same cloud, and we're finding ways of accessing one another and traversing any perceived materialist walls that you would think might be there. And so I had a lot of fun crafting the article. I had a ton of fun with the artwork, and so it was a lot of work, and I was really happy that it turned out the way it did. I've gotten some really positive feedback. So
Well, I indeed, I damn hope so. I mean, it's a fun read, and it's it's I, dare I say a heavy read, meaning you it's not something it's not a Sunday afternoon comic you read in 13 seconds, right? this
no,
is this is
no.
a this is a contemplative piece that expands. You can feel your mind getting bigger as you read it, and you just touched on it because it's one of the first things I wanted to bring up, where you at the very towards the beginning of the article you conclude that the paranormal and all this stuff isn't it's an us thing, and like you just said, and I because I had this thought last night, and I'm sure whether it's your influence or not, which I'm sure you've influenced the way I think about a lot of things in the paranormal over the 5 years since I've known you, for sure. But the paranormal is deeply personal,
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're touching on here. And it's deeply personal, it's intimate, and we don't have to go further than watching some of the whistleblowers for the UFO UAP disclosure that have been coming out in the last couple months, and some of
mm-hmm.
their interviews on News Nation or whatever else, and you see how emotional they are. You can see how emotional Dr. Stephen Greer gets in episode 4 of his podcast when he's discussing his experience as like an 18-year-old where he had contact with ETs and
Mm-hmm.
was essentially taught the CE5 protocols on a ship.
Yeah,
And he calls it contact, not abduction. And you see how emotional he gets. And I think that speaks to exactly the heart of things of what you're getting to here. And you're uncovering it and you're laying it out in a way that's understandable for people, especially because this is, make no mistake, this is a huge net that's being cast when you're
yeah.
talking about, scientific, metaphysical, spiritual, esoteric. Yeah, and this article ties all of this in together. I mean, if I there needs to be an audio version of this article, by the way. I hope you'll consider that. And if you don't have time, I know a guy who will record it as soon as we're done recording here tonight. I mean, I'd love for people to be able to hear this article as well. So, but the artwork is really, really cool. So, um, you can make a YouTube video that's audio only with the artwork. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm already assigning you more work on something you've done for people, not I'm
Yeah.
like giving you work. But anyway, what is, you know, so once you establish the fact that the paranormal is an us thing, right? And all of the, and, all this phenomena. And I love how you said it's not how does it work, but why? And do all the pieces just start falling into place once you change the question?
I think I really do when you just kind of reframe how you approach it, because the walls that were constructed for me like early on in my paranormal explorations of ghost hunting, and you get the structure where the tragedy happened. You go inside those walls, and there in those walls lies the discarnate, disgruntled person who suffered this trauma, and they're haunting, and they have a message they want to get out to you. And you try to put a cute little bow on that, and you're like, this is my model. This is the construction of how the paranormal works. But the longer you work at it, and I think the more open you are to just kind of reading the room, there were so many experiences that I had that just kept opening my mind a little bit more, like, I don't think I have this figured out. And so every time that I would have a new revelation like that, it would just knock down another wall. And next thing you know, I'm standing there, and it's a wide open space is kind of what it felt like. And I just started thinking about all these different ways that this could possibly fit. And at the end of the day, I just really feel like consciousness is the key. But we all have our different doors that we walk through to find this. And so regardless of the path that you're on, I think eventually you kind of get to, if you're on the journey of like the supernatural paranormal, you finally get to a point where you just kind of have to, let go of everything that you felt like you were holding on to, and be okay with not knowing, and just kind of accepting things the way that they appear to be, and not being fearful of that as well. So I tackle, like I said, so many different ways that people might approach. I mean, everything from like spiritualism to theology to and even the controversies and the criticisms that you may face, regardless of what path you're taking when it comes to this type of communication. And just really try to frame it in an accessible way for people, regardless if you're an ITC researcher and you're just kicking these ideas around yourself, or if you're someone who is a recreational ghost box user and you're getting weird stuff that you don't understand because the ghost you met 5 miles ago, 3 years down prior, is still talking to you. It's like, what does that mean? You're not in the haunted location anymore. So there's just so many times that my experiences did not fit the model, and so I felt like I just kind of had to let all that stuff go. And I was wrestling with all those concepts, when you and I first met, because of things that just were not making sense. So I kept diving in and trying to explore these these maybes and possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to further explore the thoughtful approach to ITC. And by thoughtful, I mean, obviously, that's a layered word here. And, the existence we have a thoughtful existence, in fact, and where it's just filled with our thoughts. So we're going to be right back with, my guy and yours, Matthew Jackson, talking about ITC, talking about the latest Obscura Vox article that he put out about a week and a half ago now, I suppose. And there's a lot more to dig into, and we're not going to even get to it all, but we're going to be right back after this short break. Okay, we're back with Matthew Jackson. I want to talk to you specifically about these walls. The walls that can be built around an idea of how things need to be done, how things successfully are achieved. And we've already touched on what breaks those walls down, being, not being the results, not being able to fit into the walls. But also we're kind of jumping ahead to the end of towards the later part of the article here, but there's also an old friend of ours who shows up and takes a sledgehammer to those walls. Name goes by many names. Most of us know it as the trickster. Let's talk a little bit about that and how those things, how the trickster ties into what you were just talking about before we went to break.
Well, anyone that gets involved with the paranormal is going to more than likely encounter something that is going to just hit them over the head, scare them to death, sometimes even traumatize. I mean, I've known people that have gotten out of the field because of messages that they've received. And I think I think the first time that I finally acknowledged that there, was this potential energy was when I was in the St. Albans Sanatorium in Radford, Virginia, and there is a room there that they call Donald's room. And the basic story with Donald is gross. He was this guy who worked at the hospital years ago, and did creepy things to the young boys, and just terrible things like that. And but I will say that if you go to the St. Albans Sanatorium and you go into Donald's room, you will be getting messages from what appears to be the most vile, sexually perverse, sarcastic, and pretty humorous ghost you'll ever, and I say that with quotations, ghost that you will ever meet. And the crazy thing about Donald is he doesn't exist. He never existed, but he exists. There is something there that has taken on this persona, and it's a very performative thing. And back then when my code of ethics with ITC and all this wasn't quite what it is now, because I would never do this on my own. I would never like live stream when I'm doing an ITC session. And so at this point, I was in there real early in the morning. I got up before my entire crew, went into Donald's room. I'm doing a ghost box session, talking to Donald. He's saying his usual stuff to me. And I'll never forget, I'm live streaming and I say, Donald, the entire world is watching. What's your message for everybody? And he said, I hate you. I hate God. And I hate everybody. And my sense of humor. And I don't even know if I had a cup of coffee yet that morning. And that just struck me as so freaking funny. It's like you got one shot, man, one chance to get your message out, and that's what you got. And I laughed hysterically. You could probably still go back on the live feed, and I just lose it. And but to a lot of people that would have like freaked them out. And so it was later doing the historical research, and I found out there's no record of Donald and his crimes ever existing. I was like, whoa. And part of the story is there's another character there who is like this, young boy that was traumatized by Donald named Jacob. And the story is Donald holds Jacob there, and Jacob never existed either. But I asked to speak to Jacob, and I got an ITC response, because we'll sometimes get the crosstalk between the entities. I got this message of go be him.
Wow.
That blew. And actually, my buddy Gene Caswell is the one who heard that. He's the first one to point that out, and I was just like, "What is happening here?" The history doesn't match up. I'm getting these just wild messages. Obviously, because the way that I'm raised, I felt like there's this predatory nature, like they're trying to undermine my nerve and get me out of there by all this evil talk. And then when I got this message of "Go be him," it's like, wait, this is a play. What is happening here? And so I started noting events like that. And then later when I start listening to you during COVID and you're reading Trickster and the Paranormal, I'm like, oh yeah, I've met that guy. And so that I got the book and I read it as well. And I just think it's something important to note, because if I think everything belongs, and there's a reason why that element is out there. And so it's something to be cognizant of, that not everything is like love and light. And I mean, I think there's a balance to good and evil, and all the duality of a lot of this stuff, because I've seemingly encountered it all. So yeah, so that's why I felt like it was important to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean that's wild.
Yeah.
And you know, and the how pops up, of course, but a more fascinating question for me is why? Why are they inclined to be the performative entities that they've decided to be in this situation and assume roles that have been assigned to them somehow, some way? And I don't know where they originated from, but it makes me wonder. I mean, because we're talking about and consciousness and being the foundation of things, and you and I are idealists in that way, and we've been on board with this idea for a long time, and the the possibilities truly are endless. Now, if we are, because I've heard similar things about this being, where you get a story, so many people coming into a place and putting on the story that they expect to happen, and then that
Mhm.
story starts. It's a collective manifestation of some kind of entity creating this story, right? And where the origin of that story comes from doesn't really matter. And like you said, how doesn't matter, but it's why. And the why ultimately just shows us that there's something here that is intelligent and that's connected, right?
It's either parasitic in nature and it's eating the energy of our thoughts,
Oh my
and
God.
we're feeding this thing. Why not? Or or it's something that our collective thoughts are able to manifest, but there has to be something there on the other end of things to make that happen. So, and, you can even get into the Philip experiment in Canada back in the 70s, and how they pretty much from their minds they made at least a table, a sentient object there for a while, and this table was walking all over the room by the time it was over said and done. And it didn't stop until one of the participants said, "We made you up." Boom, done. So we play a part into it somehow, there's no doubt
Well,
about it.
yeah. Well, it's a
Yeah.
relationship, right? And then
Yeah.
you're touching on that in the article as well, that it is. I mean, there's reciprocity
Hmm.
happening
It's
there
interactive. Yeah.
because of the interactive nature and the collaborative nature of being connected through the conscious realm and through energetic. And you talk about the medium, right? And what's the medium of ITC, and whether whatever device it is comes up with sounds or vibrations,
Hmm.
giving, I guess, giving voice to whatever else that might be there, that is separated from us in the physical realm, either by dimension or by the material it's composed of, right? And
Yeah.
I here's what really, I every once in a while I forget, and then I get totally jacked up thinking about ITC being just the key to it all. And I've talked to you about this before, where it's just
Yeah.
like, as soon as the device comes along that does it clearly, everything is over. Like, our idea of what physical death is over. The
Yeah.
our relationships with other people. It's like how we think they're bound by time and space
Mhm.
are over. Um, when it comes to the world of ITC and that these devices being the medium, do you think they're the best, or the medium? Do you think they're the best way to do it? I mean, that's not to say that they're better than certain mediums or psychics, etc. But for a practical, easy access, wide scope for people everywhere, do you think ITC is the future?
It's kind of funny. I mean, to kind of reel that back a little bit, I often think about I remember reading and studying before about Buddhism coming to the West. And when Buddhism first came here, and everybody's seeing like these monks meditate, and they're transcending, and they're doing these amazing things. It's like here in the West, the shortcut was psychedelics. It's like we got to find an easier way. And sometimes I kind of think it's like, with ITC we're trying to commune with something that people have been trying to connect with since the beginning of time, with shamans and mushrooms, and all these old rituals and ceremonies from around the world, and psychics and mediums, and so forth. And it's just like, man, is ITC, are we cheating? are we like circumventing like the necessary steps to get where we want to go? But they're so I almost feel like they're such a training tool for our consciousness to be able to connect and to access different realms and different existence and frequency and vibration and so forth. I think it's a natural progression, and I think as technology improves, I think it's slowly going to just improve us as well. So I think it's probably part of the evolution of all that. But I'm someone old school enough that I feel like we got to give homage to where we come from to understand the significance of where we're at and where we're going. So that was a windy way of answering your yes or no question, but
Well, thank God it's a podcast. And words are gold
right.
here. It is interesting. When we come back, I've got follow-up questions. And we'll also address Matthew's claim that acting like we're reeling anything in over here. I mean, in fact, we're just casting it out even further with the illusion that let's reel this in a little bit and just shaky ground, my friend. Just a reminder: Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. No ads on any of the podcasts at $3 a month ever. All week, these episodes will be free of advertisements for anyone who signs up to be a patron over there, even if you're free. Anniversary week, all the episodes will be free of ads over there. So go over there and listen. And then you'll just have to listen to like 5 seconds of awkward silence as I say we're going to commercial and Matt tries not to breathe too hard. Here we go. And go. Okay, we're back. So, um, I mean, what's so interesting to me is the idea of a shortcut. And it reminds me of something I'll get into in much greater detail for people on the next episode that comes out after this, which will be a third year bonus where I talk about Dr. Stephen Greer's episode 4 and 5 of his podcast. 5 just dropped like 11 hours ago. So I haven't listened to it yet, but I'll listen to that one as well. Just trying to keep up to date on the latest, greatest disclosure news for everybody. Something really fascinating he mentions in episode 4. I think it was 1991 or 2 or 3 or something. He was at some kind of conference, like a paranormal type of conference thing or a scientific thing. And an old guy in his 80s comes up to him and says, I've got technology for you that I want you to have that gets you, it's something he invented. And Greer doesn't name who the scientist is. And he says, it is something I've invented and it gets you immediately into the state of of what you've been talking about with your CE5 stuff to be able to establish contact. It gets your brain there. It kind of, like you said, it's a shortcut, right? Through these audio tricks, through listening through headphones. He said this guy was really hopeful that he would do it because it'll establish contact for you in a jiff. Greer said, I can't take it. I'm not going to use this. Human beings aren't ready for this technology yet. That man later dies. Obviously, he was in his 80s already. And according to Greer, his technology is swallowed up by some arm of the CIA. Now, here we are in Glendale, California, in my apartment. Or, well, no, I don't live in Glendale anymore. That's weird. I just had a brain fart. I'm doing something called the Gateway Program, invented by Robert Monroe, who used to be in the military and was an inventor of, I believe, the binaural beats, right? Or the HemiSync technology that gets your brain into this space. And even though he won't mention the name of the scientist in the episode, I can guarantee you that man was Robert Monroe, who he said was a good guy, right? And wanted the best of this technology. Wanted to, and then I think it was 25 years ago that I think Freedom of Information Act request disclosed that the CIA agents were using, all the CIA agents were being trained in the Gateway meditation program.
I believe so, yeah.
So, and now we have the recent disclosure of psionics happening by Jake Barber, the whistleblower who came out about Immaculate Constellation type UFO retrieval programs, how teams of psychics essentially are contacting, taking control of, and bringing in UFOs. And then electromagnetic pulse weaponry or whatever it is will shoot these UFOs down. So they're using Monroe's, probably some of it. So is it a shortcut? It seems like it is, but also it. In addition to that, I think it can be more than one thing at once. I think it also is an augmented. It's a tool of augmentation that isn't necessarily a shortcut as much as it just enhances something, right? And I think Greer calls it TAC, or technology assisting consciousness, or consciousness assisting technologies. Those are the two acronyms he uses. So ITC would be TAC,
Yeah.
TAC.
Like I said, I definitely feel at this point it is something that's helping us, and I think it helps us develop. Whether that's something you're working on your own mediumistic gifts, or I think it's definitely a useful tool. And I know we've talked about this before in an episode how ITC inventor Ron Ricketts, who was kind of ahead of his time, he made a series of ghost boxes. He called them the mini box. And those devices, he really viewed those as training wheels. And eventually, according to him, you will not need the device after utilizing them for so long. But the way the technology is moving now, and some of the stuff that that I'm involved with, it's rapidly changing, and it just keeps opening up these other realities more and more. I mean, I'm having more profound ITC experiences now than what I've ever had when I was just using like the radio based devices or recorders. And like I know just by my ear and my intuition when something is connecting, something is hitting. And I think that's something that just comes with time. Like, or sometimes if you get a response that I think is like a false positive, or like a false hit, like something that doesn't make sense, or even when I use like the ghost boxes, it's like you just kind of get this intuition and gut on, like, no, that was probably an ad for Coca-Cola, and that was actually an ITC response. That's something that just sounded different, disconnected, and you just know it. Um, so yeah, I think it all goes hand in hand with helping us develop, and I think it's a skill set.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I get it. I love gadgets, and I
Mhm.
love layering gadgets, and we love layering technology to try to have multiple hit points, right? For
Mhm.
confirmations. And I think that's why one of the reasons why people like the Estes method so much, right? And
Yeah.
because it's layering different technologies onto or different modalities into the same new technique, right? It's just building on things that have already been used in the past, combining them into a new thing, and supercharging and juicing up, what you can get, maybe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because we're talking about, specifically on different investigations, we've talked about using LED light goggles that can get your, brain, LED entrainment goggles that the light sequences can get we can transition our brain waves to the right state, that we're more open to receiving messages while we're doing these other things, while we're using a box, or, layering on top. And like the idea of it is like, oh yeah, this is, so it excites me
Yeah.
for sure. And it also excites me maybe because I've been eating too many sugar filled cinnamon rolls, and my third eye is temporarily shut down, closed for the season, right? For sugar season. And my antenna isn't out because I'm just all jacked up. You know what I mean?
You're the only guy I know whose pineal gland is diabetic. I've never seen someone have to snort insulin.
Hold on, before we try to make contact, let me chop up a line of this insulin. Who's got a tarot card I can roll up into a straw? Oh my god. Okay, we're not not trying to condone nose use of drugs over here on the program, but says the guy with no cartilage. The I what's interesting though too is I mean, we've got all, we can talk all day about gadgets and we can talk about, um, consciousness, and we can muse about it. And I love musing about things. That's like my number one thing. The article that you wrote is you're referencing every section of it. I think there's what are 8 or 9 sections. You're
Yeah.
you're you're loading it in with, and this is why I'm saying that, right? And you're pulling from whether it's scientific quantum theory, past scientific experimentation, um, or philosophy, or writers of philosophy, et cetera, or like paranormal investigate things like that. So there, you're layering it in. You're building the framework, as you kind of, I think you use the word framework, and the skeleton, and that's why the skeleton is such a great metaphor throughout visually. But it's it's interesting because you don't have to spend 75 years of your life uncovering finding the holy grail for this, right?
No.
And I think what this article shows us is we don't have to, you know, sacrifice everything in our life to be able to find the evidence that this is real. Now, it's not there for everybody who just sits around and muses about it. You got to do the work, and you have to have a lifetime, and you've spent your life doing this work already, which has raised questions, which has led you on quests to find answers. But and then you went and found those answers without having to like sacrifice your firstborn child to do so, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? This isn't the Temple of the Doom or some shit. Like the answers can be out there for us if we are dedicated enough and we know where to look. And I think the question of why maybe finally led you to some of these places.
Yeah, and you just find this amazing collection of historic figures who were prominent and for various reasons in different schools of thought, and I just find it fascinating to read about their lives and how they kind of came to the conclusions that they did, and maybe their contributions at the time were not like ITC related, but if you look at everything under the realm of consciousness, you definitely see how it's all applicable. And that's why, like at the end, it's like the unified theories, like everything belongs, and the guys that I know now, some of my colleagues and all this stuff and the work that they're doing. I mean, the heavy lifting with the technology and the research and everything. And I'm just, I'm the guy that gets to observe and play with everything and kind of get to know it and just see where ITC is going. So I feel very fortunate for where I'm at in the ITC spectrum.
Yeah. And something that needs to be said here is the simplest things can be the most brilliant.
Hmm.
And being able to bring it together after it's brought together, oftentimes it becomes like, oh yeah, that's so obvious, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think that's my phone going off. Oh, that's Ron Talski. Um, so oftentimes it's something that is so obvious that it just hasn't been brought up. And then when everybody sees it or hears it, they're just like, oh, duh, right?
All
And
right.
that's the brilliance, and that's the brilliance of it. It's always been there, ready to be
Hmm.
grabbed, and no one's grabbed it yet. And I think what you're grabbing something with this article
Yeah.
is what
Trying
I'm
to.
saying.
Yeah.
Well, you've got your death grip on it. You're not trying. You've grabbed it. It is grasped. Even though why grasp or grab? It's like we changing the B to an S and a P. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The um
Yeah.
the the simple brilliance of being able to tie all of this in together, but with sources and with these different modalities and these different fields, I think is what's very compelling about it. And what it am I wrong in thinking that the takeaway from this thing could be, for at least for me, it has been one of the takeaways, is this mystery world of the paranormal and communicating with the great beyond and or entities from space through the power of our minds, right? it's
Mhm.
it's been right there,
Yeah.
and it is right there for us, right?
Yeah. You know, as much as we like to say paranormal, I mean, there's just things that maybe we don't understand how they work, but like we get back to, just the why that they're there and just the acceptance and the beauty of that and be open to those experiences and know that it's actually probably pretty normal. We just don't know exactly how it all may fit, but everything I feel seems to be related. And there's so many things in that article that it's amazing how much I do not know about quantum physics. I mean, it's
Well,
astonishing.
I think you could say that about even the person who knows the most about it.
Yeah, right, right. And but there are these things that are dangling out there that potentially might be like the how when it all is discovered. Once people keep pushing that might actually get us to more concrete science behind some of this stuff. But I think right now our approach has to be kind of accepting of the scientific aspect of vibration and things that are measurable, those things that we can take and use. But at the same time, we can't shut off the spiritual aspect of this and
Yeah.
yeah, the biological. So yeah, I think
It's a
it's all
dance, right?
there.
It's a
It really
dance.
is. And I don't know of any other, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I don't know if I've ever read an article like what I've put together where they kind of just take a little bit of everything and lay it out just for people to kind of see and kind of walk through that zoo and check it all out. So that's really what I wanted to do.
Yeah, well, we're gonna take another break. When we come back, I'm gonna read you an excerpt from not you, but I'm gonna read everyone, and I also to you, Matthew, an excerpt from the article talking about just that, the quantum mechanics and the non-locality thing. That so you can hear a little more specifically what we're referencing here as we talk. And I just went to the zoo this past weekend for the Lunar New Year, and it was amazing. There was a draft there that there was three drafts there that I want to go back, sneak in, and just hang out with them. But just a reminder, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials ever. But all week during anniversary week, every episode this week will be ad free, even for the free patrons. So go be a free patron. You don't have to pay any money to be free. Some things are still free in this country. And one of them is me and Paranormal Use Patreon page if you choose that tier. We're going to be right back. Oh, that was weird. We're back. What I'm saying was weird is the Zoom clock on the Zoom window skipped. I think we're still in this timeline unless we jumped. Matt, are you still there? Uh,
Let me let me Google who's president. I'll be right back.
Let me read a section from Quantum Mechanics and ITC, Bridging Realms Through Science, of the brilliant article that Matt put out on the 27th of January, I believe. Quantum mechanics provides a framework of understanding ITC by demonstrating the deep interconnectedness of particles and dimensions where information transfer transcends physical boundaries. For example, quantum entanglement, where two particles remain linked regardless of distance, suggests that information can travel instantaneously. This phenomena aligns with ITC's premise, suggesting entities can interact across realms transcending physical boundaries. Now, that was my audition to do the audio version, the audiobook version of your article, even though I think you should do it. But in case you can't afford I can be we can put me on hold, as they would say in the commercial, the TV commercial business, like you're on hold for this audition in case something happens to the guy we really want. Um, so I love this idea too about the non-locality, the bilocality, regardless of the separation of something, they are still connected to one another, right? And that's what quantum physics is understanding, is showing. And if in fact all of us are part of the bigger, what is it, who's the guy with the LCS, the larger consciousness system, uh
Um, Campbell, Tom Campbell.
Yeah, Tom Campbell.
Mhm.
I wonder if he's related to Joseph, but
I wondered the
uh,
same thing.
uh, so if Thomas Campbell's accurate in his theory about the how we're all part of the larger consciousness system,
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter how separated we are by space and or time. If the quantum physics bilocality or non-locality phenomena applies, which we believe it does, that means we're all connected, and therefore we all have the access to the same thing that we already are because we are it, even though we assume separation, which is an illusion. Am I getting that right?
Yes, you're hired. Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the whole idea. So when you look at some of those sciences too, and it's like, things that they're discovering, it's just like, some of these, things that we felt in exploring the paranormal and these experiences we had, it's like, this actually might be real, and something that they can actually like discover, like we're not just crazy people. So I found those details like really exciting.
Yeah, and I know many of us in the in the woo woo world can be accused of cherry picking scientific information and applying it to whatever it is we've already believed for confirmation bias, which you mention and bring up in this article as well. About you talk about confirmation bias. So I just want to
Hmm.
address that for anybody listening who might be new to the program and not understand that I, for one, and Matt, for two, are there's no redemption for our woo woo souls. If in case you're hoping to slide us back into the materialistic congregation, but um, what's also interesting is I just recently remembered my soul contract that my shamanic Reiki healer Sarah Goff told me, 7 years ago, whenever it was, that I was supposed to build a bridge between the believable and the non-believable, but I'm not allowed to pick a side. And here I am just being like, don't even try to recruit me back to the materialistic congregation, you heathen. So maybe I'll tone that language down a little bit. But um, you your journey has been, I guess, our journeys have kind of mirrored each other in that way to a certain degree, because you were talking earlier about your journey first starting out, just doing paranormal investigations or ghost hunting
Hmm.
or whatever it is. And you always were drawn to the ITC element of things,
Hmm.
at least as a hyper focus, I would say. Right.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I know there's people that we know, mutual friends of ours, that seem to believe that your calling is actually a greater calling regarding that. But maybe we'll touch on Prism a little bit here,
Okay.
because first of all, I think this article can inspire a lot of things in people. For me, it's about thoughtfulness, it's about care, it's about preparation for investigation as well. Not
Hmm.
just, hey, let's go do this. Okay, turn the box on. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because we were talking a little bit about the dance right before we went to break. So I need to get back to, okay, so I finally found my way back. Um, the dance between the device and the intuition, the spiritual nature of consciousness, right?
Hmm.
And how we have to be in step with one another. The spirituality and the woo side needs to be in step with the technical and the mechanical side, right?
Yeah. Uh, like I said earlier, the things that we can measure, the things that we can have some controls on, I think are really important to introduce into this conversation, because it just lends itself to any type of credibility that when we go to present things for people who might be more, critical of our approaches. So I think it's important to have that layer. But as far as like the proper mindset, for approaching communication like this, I think is something that people have done for thousands of years when it comes to communing with the others and so forth. So, and if our if our thoughts are energy and we're, wanting to connect to these other frequencies and different vibrations and different spaces and so forth, I think if you have someone that is overly, critical, or they're kind of like uh, throwing some toxins in your in your palette of resonances as you're trying to appeal for communication and confirmation, I think it can impact the experience as well, and possibly even the technology. So I think it's important. So yeah, the ritual aspect of it, I think, the breathing techniques. I love when we've worked together and we've incorporated the tones from the CE5 protocols, and I think just getting centered and trying to open up, I think is a big part of it, and I think that's one reason why, um, my work. I mean, that's something that I've tried to incorporate for years instead of just like winging it, and I think it makes a difference.
I think it makes a huge difference. And, because you reference Pear Labs, who we've had the pleasure on this program to interview Dr. Roger Nelson, who used to be over at the Princeton, what's the E stand for in Pear again? Extrasensory Anomaly and
Hmm.
Anomaly Research Lab,
Yeah.
um, who used to be over there for a while. The Global Consciousness Project. I mean, no surprise, right? I guess. But specifically the Pear Labs in showing like intention and belief beforehand, kind of in the effects of parapsychological results and things like that can be improved with belief. And it's one of those things where I think maybe I don't know how long in the future it will be before the scientific community or the quote unquote scientific community, um, because I think skeptics, even though they're not scientists, most of them, they would lump themselves into the scientific community. That's why I'm putting quotes on it, even though scientists are like, wait, why are you quoting my thing? Air quoting my. So anyway, there will come a time where I don't even know if we call it the scientific community anymore because it will change. And I
Hmm.
think the idea of thought, intention, and belief and intuition, psychokinetic things, all that stuff that kind of, it's like this whole crock pot of all the things that affect outcome, observation, which you touch on
Yeah.
in the article as well. It will redefine what science is and what is, because obviously we'll all understand that it's real.
I came up with a tagline. I think it was my tagline, but I was using it for years before I probably fully understood how um, how much it really mattered. I always
Oh, well,
just
let me guess
ask
what it
people.
is. Let me guess what it is
Okay,
before you tell it. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Did you came up with that?
yeah, that was me. That was me.
No, no.
No,
So,
no.
okay. So for
I was just.
years,
I would say, what's the frequency of your intention? When it came
oh,
to like ITC. That was something that I said a lot. And the more that I've grown and the more that I come to, understand these different concepts, or at least attempt to understand them, the more I think that carries more weight than what I even knew to begin with. Um,
well, that's
so
blowing
yeah.
my mind right now because are you familiar with the REM song, What's Your Frequency, Kenneth?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you under, I just learned the origin of that phrase in that song.
What is it?
I think it was the guy who, um, oh God, there was somebody who tried to assassinate, was it Reagan or Nixon? And he was like a crazy person or whatever, right? And when he attacked or whoever they tried to kill, it might have been Reagan.
There's an
They,
assassination tip on Reagan.
yeah, they kept saying, the person kept saying, "What's your frequency, Kenneth?" while they did it, or in the act of trying to attack whoever it was. They kept
Hmm.
saying, "What's your frequency, Kenneth? What's your frequency, Kenneth?" Over and over and over again.
Because I know
Uh,
the guy who tried to kill Reagan, he also said that he was trying to impress Jodie Foster.
yeah, so it's probably not the Reagan one. This is a
Yeah,
different thing. Um, so for whatever reason, this person was driven to, attempted murder. For whatever reason, they were just saying over and over again, "What's your frequency, Kenneth?" I'm pretty sure, um, which is a weird thing to be saying, right?
yeah,
Unless who knows what was going on, but what's the frequency of your thoughts, right? So,
yeah,
so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what that person meant when they were asking that question to a person who was not named Kenneth, by the way. So,
yeah,
but what's the frequency of your thought is very, very interesting, and it ties directly into Prism, I think.
yeah.
And we're gonna do one last quick little break. These are all these last few will probably just be like the one commercial. So just hit that fast forward button once, like 15 seconds or whatever it is, and maybe that's just boom, you're right back into it. So we're gonna be right back. We're gonna put a bow on this bad boy, and then we're gonna talk about Prism, and we're also gonna talk about some of the questions that have been included in the article that Matt put out on obscuravox.com, which obviously will be linked to on this in the show notes. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I'm very excited. We're talking about the free. Matt was saying that I've never heard that phrase before. What's the frequency of your thoughts? So I'm going to give it to you, and say
Intentions.
that's your intentions.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm going to give that to you as you coined that. What's the frequency of your intentions? God, we didn't even get into the Mark Macy part of here.
yeah,
But that's people are just going to have to read this. And the hermeticism part. I mean, and everybody who listens to this for any amount of time knows that I'm a hermit head, dude. I'm a hermetic head. I love hermeticism, even though barely. I admit I barely understand it, but the God, you gotta read this article. So there's a bunch of questions. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna end with a question for everybody. I'm gonna let you maybe pick one, or I'll pick my one of the questions from the seven that you've, which is obviously you used seven questions, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so let's talk about the frequency of intention and how it relates to Prism, because oh boy. I mean, I think we can talk about that, right?
Yeah. It's all the same.
So there is a working theory that depending on the frequency or I don't know how do you describe it? Is it the higher the frequency? There's a working theory about the higher the frequency, and there's a distinction between the frequencies and the entities who come in at different frequencies on through the prism.
That is a thought and a theory, nothing that is like confirmed yet or anything. But from my experience and knowing where the development of Prism has been, and kind of knowing where the different frequencies lie in the sound palette and the resonance that we're creating, hearing the varied layers of responses and just knowing the stack of where the different frequencies lie. That's something I have asked about, and why that might make a difference, and if there is a correlation between different levels of entities coordinating or correlating to the different frequencies. So that is that's out there. Can't be confirmed, but it's a working idea that I'm keeping an eye on as things
Well, it's an
develop.
exciting
Yeah,
prospect, the idea of such a thing. And to
yeah,
be clear, I don't want to designate higher frequency, better entity. I'm not trying to correlate those two things, but it does seem that there might be more intelligent responses potentially,
yes,
or so I mean, it's really fascinating. And in the article, you're talking about different frequencies potentially. It's like if we look at the entirety of existence, and the fabric of all that is there, and parallel dimensions, multi dimensions, all this other stuff,
Hmm.
past, present, future. And if, in fact, ITC devices, depending on how you use them and tune them or whatever you're doing with them, can go to a different station. Let's say a different dimension is a different station on your radio, right? That are all
Yeah.
simultaneously broadcasting. I think you used that phrase, something along
Hmm.
those lines of, simultaneous broadcasting of these things. And so these entities that are simultaneously coming through a device like Prism potentially are from different dimensions or from different areas, but simultaneously. Is that fair of me to
Yeah,
speculate wildly
I
about?
Yeah, I think so because I don't even think that's that different from like some of the stuff I've read from like Thomas Campbell and his work with the Monroe Institute and the out of body experiences that they would have and the entities that they would meet when they were having these experiences. It was varied frequencies. Then they would encounter different levels of existence and different types of entities for lack of a better word. So I think I think there's grounds for these assumptions, kind of layered in there that you can make the argument that that could be the way things might might stack up.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is we have experienced, and I've experienced this first year, uh, seemingly these things, these things, these people, these entities, whatever, different ones kind of almost like questioning the other ones or being like, hey, wait, are you?
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's almost as if they got brought into the same way. It's like Beetlejuice's waiting room, right? And there's all these different like things in there, and you're just like, where'd
Yeah.
you come from? Oh, where'd you come from? When did you come from? Right? And
Yeah.
so simultaneously, while we're trying to get very specific information that looking back, in 100 years from now, people might be like, they're pretty short-sighted. They're just asking, like, can you tell us where we are located right now? It's like you have access to the entirety of all information and human and knowledge and universal knowledge, human and otherwise, and you're asking, can you confirm that we're in Florida?
He had the Archangel Michael on the line, and he's saying, "What color is my shirt?"
Yeah. Can you spell my name for me? Spell my name, spirit. Okay. Um, anyway, I'm not trying to dunk on us.
No, no, no. But I totally get what you're saying. And the other thing that I've encountered a lot too, is the seeming like hierarchy of things that will come in and start bossing others on how to respond and what to say. Like, here's your script, here's how you're going to respond, and so forth, which is always just
That's
blowing my
wild.
mind too. Yeah.
It's so wild when you're sitting there interacting with this device, trying to find out information and what we believe to be a pretty serious investigation and a
Hmm.
quest for knowledge. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, they don't even need us here. It's like
Right.
when a couple starts making out and you're like, okay, I guess you guys don't need me. I'll just go into the other room. Right. If there's like three of you and then two people start going at it, you're just like, I'm still in here. Right. But I guess I'll leave. Did you want me to stay? Because I don't know how I feel about that, but who knows? Maybe I'll open myself up to that. But anyway, no pun intended, opening myself up to that. But the the idea, what are we talking about here? So this idea, though, that there is kind of an authority in which one of these voices comes in, sounding totally different, by the way, just to reinforce that for people listening. And then that voice that sounds totally different can then start, like you said, giving instructions
Hmm.
to some of the other voices. To me, it there's so many implications there, and there's
Right.
so many questions, um, that it's because you tend to be like, well, that's the person I need to be talking to.
Right.
But like we know in any hierarchical situation, sometimes that's not the person that's going to tell you anything,
Yep.
because they're the person trying to keep it all together, or trying to keep the structure or something. It's the people a little, lower on the ladder who are like, I got nothing to lose. I'll tell you every company secret I've ever heard, right? Like a guy who works in the mailroom is going to be like, oh yeah, the boss was outside getting a HJ from his secretary or whatever. It's just like, what are you talking about? I thought we were talking about company secrets. We're not talking about philandering, but and the misuse of workplace power, but dynamics. But so so part of me wonders, like, who's going to give up the goods, right? And is there even a rule that you can't give up the goods? In fact, but
Yeah.
sometimes there seems like there might be some kind of thing,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That it feels like it's like a whoa, 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 like something on the other side is like whoa, 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 hey, easy now with all this. Don't just be wheeling and dealing all this information to these guys.
I've been told that they don't have certain permissions. But there are like little tidbits of they're in another dimension. And and then what really blows me away, especially what I found through my work with Prism, when they start asking me questions. And it's just like, whoa. I mean, you mean you're just like stuck on your side and just as clueless as I am? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of an interesting observation too, which is relatively like new to me. Um,
I
and
just hear a
it's
spirit. I could just see a spirit, like a voice comes through the prison that says, "You've got two ears in one mouth, Matthew. Think about it. Less talky talky, more lissy lissy." Like, okay, Dave. Okay, what do you want to tell me? Shit, get it off your chest,
and,
spirit.
and and some of these things don't come through as in, through the concept of what we would believe of what a ghost might be. Like I'm not talking to anybody local, you know.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with the space. And when they're like, what are you doing? It's essentially what they're asking me, like, what is this work? What's happening here? Can you explain this to us? Are you getting paid for this? you
yeah,
know,
right.
is this your job? So it's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing, and there seems to be different people from different things. And I'm just saying the word people here just for this ease of conversation, but different people from different places showing up,
Hmm.
and it doesn't seem like they know each other. But they have a complete ease of communication, which I think is also the interesting point here, that they don't need a box on their end to
Right,
communicate with the other entities that are showing up into this box or coming
right.
through. They're just already boom. They're already in. They seem to be able to watch a picture-in-picture TV show or a simulcast, and they can still access all the information that's happening separately simultaneously.
Quantum physics.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna read one of the questions for everybody from the article. Um, I'm really on the number three right now. Um, Number three is showing up for me a lot right now. So we're going to go number three. There's 7 questions at the end of this article that I think are great exercises of the mind. Um, how about this one? Okay, number three. Could ITC provide more than just messages from unseen entities? Perhaps a means to understand the fabric of existence itself. I mean, I think that ties beautifully into what we've been discussing here. These questions at the end of the article are great exercises to launch off into your own thoughts, ideas, theories. You can incorporate them into your personal ITC practice or just your meditation practice. I think, like you said, with the mini boxes, it's like these are the training wheels, and then sooner or later we'll just be able to do it without.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, well, shit. I hope so too. I mean, I'm over here trying. I'm gonna try to blast off tonight on some gateway, and I got to get this remote viewing down. I've got our friend Carolyn writing 6 numbers down on a piece of paper in an envelope for me. I don't know if she did it today or not. And then I'm going to see if I can remote view it. I will keep you posted, obviously, because
Yeah, please do.
as soon as I get this remote viewing thing down, watch out, baby. I mean, nothing nefarious, nothing dirty, but I'm going to be looking into some stuff. You know what I mean? I'm going to be getting some answers, and I'm going to be giving them to people. So maybe I'll do it like a hey,
Just a
send
lot
me
of
in,
numbers.
send. You know what? I'd love to remote view into the future and do that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if it would allow such a selfish thing to be done, but although the military does it, so that's pretty fucking selfish, as far as I'm concerned. You know, for militaristic reasons, they're still able to do it. So that's not like good guy vibes.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the story about the remote viewer who remote viewed the Titanic disaster? And he said the guy that was supposed to be watching out for the iceberg went to the bathroom, and that's why he wasn't at his post and didn't have time to respond to steer the ship away from the iceberg. Have you ever heard this?
Mm-mm.
A
No.
remote viewer. I think this may have been done, maybe by the government. This guy, I forget who he was, but the government used him a lot for remote viewing. And one of the things they tested him on, or somebody tested him on, was about the Titanic disaster. And he came up with this whole story about this guy going to the bathroom. And when they checked the records of the Titanic, the bathroom where he said this guy went to was not on the map of the Titanic construction, the blueprints. The bathroom was not there. But later, like years later, they uncovered like the final like blueprint of the Titanic. And one thing they decided to add at the last second was this freaking bathroom that this remote viewer said was there the whole time. Crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Stay away from dairy, kids, especially when you're on the open ocean. No reason to be having an animal's milk in your body when you're on the open sea.
Amen.
Speaking of which,
Ice cream. Ice
I gotta,
cream
yeah,
took out the Titanic. It
ice
wasn't an
cream.
iceberg. It was Rocky Road.
It
It was
was
the
a
whole
rock.
time.
You scream, I scream, we all scream when the Titanic goes down. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of the tragic and horrifying death of people drowning in cold water. That's sounds brutal to me, but um, as does all death. But let's be real. Um, well, Matt, thank you so much for jumping on for anniversary week and going over the article. Again, I will link the article. You need to check out obscuravox.com anyway. All kinds of great stuff over there.
But he
Anything
check out
else?
the Mind Coos, man.
The Mind Coos, dude, over at the Patreon page,
Yeah,
the Mind Coos. Matt does a haiku for every 30 or bonus that I put out. And I'm putting him to work this week. We've already
that's
talked
right.
about this.
Yeah.
He's fighting me for some stock options now in the cast because of all the work I'm making him do.
That's
Putting
right.
out 5 episodes this week, probably 3 30 or bonuses. So, but yeah, check out the Mindcoos. Actually, before we go, I'm going to bring that up real quick. I'm going to bring one of them up for people, just so they can hear the last Mindcoo from I think it was 331. 30 year bonus 331. Let's see here if my computer will work, which it's not. I got the pinwheel of death on my MacBook right now, which is not good, especially considering I'm recording something right now. Makes me a little bit nervous. You'll just have to check it out over at patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Oh, here it is.
I have it. Oh, you got it?
Yeah. You want to read it since you're the poet?
Sure, sure. I love how the titles of these sometimes are longer than the poems themselves. It cracks me
Yes,
up.
I do. I do love that too.
Okay, so for the 30-year bonus, 331, cultivating power in the community garden. In our garden of fears, we plant the seeds of demons to harvest courage.
I mean, it's rad. And if you listen to that episode, you'll know exactly what that whole thing means, if you don't already, which I think you can probably figure it out. But with a little bit of, a little bit of thought. Uh, uh,
Yeah, I mean, some of these, it's like you kind of need the episode to go with them, but some of these haikus, I'm like, man, that's a solid piece, even without Ryan.
yes, and this is a good example. I
Yeah,
am not needed at all. In our garden of fears, we plant the seeds of demons to harvest courage. I mean, that's a fucking good poem, dude.
thanks, man.
Okay. Love you,
Haikus are
buddy.
hard. Hey, love you too, pal. Hey, and happy anniversary, man! I'm so proud of you for sticking in all these years and keeping
Even when
with the
everybody
podcast.
said I should quit, I'm still here.
Even when we've begged, you know.
Even when people said
No,
I will not be your friend anymore if you keep doing this.
that's
And
right.
I'm
You
like,
know what?
oh.
It's a fantastic thing that you do. It's a labor of love, and I know it reaches so many different people out there in the community. And so you are valuable. And so here's to 800 more.
Wow.
No
Here,
pressure.
here. Here, here.
Yeah,
800 more. I love that. I need to
yeah.
get to 1600. Yeah. Well, thank you, buddy. I love your work. This article is profound. It's a must read for anybody interested in the paranormal or ITC or consciousness in general. It is a must read. So, and
Thank
we'll
you.
be talking real soon, my friend. And
Yes.
until then, get some sleep. I kept you up too late.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Later, buddy.
Love you, pal.
Love you too.